Welcome back, my fellow pioneers in the space between picket lines. Today's discussion is all about the stages of fetal growth and development. So let's hop right in. Greetings and blessings to all you beautiful souls out there. Hopefully you're having a wonderful day or night thus far. Thank you very kindly for joining me, Rebecca David, on today's episode of The Genesis of Conception. Now, in our last video, we discussed the science of fertilization and the basic genetic proof that a preborn child is human. Now, the next incredibly important step is to understand what goes into prenatal growth and what each of those specific smaller steps actually entail. Now, this time labels are going to be vastly important to the topic at hand. I've noticed over my years as a pro-life advocate that many people genuinely have no idea what terms such as gestation and fetus and embryo actually translate to in regards to growth occurring within the womb. And I'm here to say that when my journey first began, I actually didn't know any of those terms either. So today, you and I, we're going to clear that right up. Now, to get to the root of the matter, once again, we are going to start with the science of it all. And this time, that means looking at the trimesters. Now, some very important labels actually occur during a female's first trimester of pregnancy, which would be the preborn child's first trimester of growth. Now, we know, compliments of clevelandclinic.org, that the baby's first label comes about during something that we would call the gestational stage, which actually begins on the first day of a woman's last menstrual period before a pregnancy. Now, it kicks into gear about 2 weeks before the pregnancy actually occurs via the 4-step process that we discussed together in depth in my last video. That's below, you can find it there. Now, the gestational stage is very important. And it's important because it is what is going to be used to track how far along the pregnancy is for the rest of the time that the woman is expecting her child. Now, in the gestational stage, the baby will very briefly be labeled as something called a blastocyte during implantation. By the 3-week mark, the new label for the baby is going to be embryo, which most of you are probably at least fairly familiar with. Now, embryo simply means that at this point, the baby is now experiencing DNA replication at an insanely rapid pace, and we also discussed DNA in our last video. Also during this process, the baby gains his or her very first nerve cells. Yeah. Now, the embryo stage is for weeks 1 through 8 of development. And then the new label for the child is fetus, which will last until birth, at which point he or she will become known as a newborn infant. Now, something incredibly pivotal to remember for the rest of this video, because I will be showing you a bunch of pictures of growth stages so you can have that mental image. Something important to remember during this is that in some of those pictures, the growing baby doesn't look anything like a newborn baby would. And sometimes, if I'm being honest, it doesn't even look human, especially for the first couple of months. But please remember that even when somebody looks different, or maybe disfigured, or odd, or any other connotation you want to put onto it, that does not detract in the least from the fact that they are an actual human being, just like you and I. If you need already born examples to remind you of this, think of maybe a horribly disfigured burn victim, or a war crime victim, or a really bad abuse victim, to name just a few. They go to show that physical appearance cannot alter what we know to be genetic truth. And now, back over to the fun stuff. Now, looking back to trimesters, we know, compliments of both clevelandclinic.org and also UCSF Health, that during a typical pregnancy, there are 3 separate trimesters. Now, each trimester is about 3 months long, and during every single one of those months, certain very specific and very important stages of growth occur. Now, they each have their own labels as well, because of course. What I'll do for y'all is I'm going to break it down into broad strokes, and then I'm going to go in depth. That way we don't have any kind of confusion. Now, trimester 1. That one encompasses the first 13 weeks of a pregnancy. It gives the baby time to develop his or her body structure and organ systems. Trimester 2, which is for weeks 14 through 26 of pregnancy. That sees the baby learning how to move around within the womb, and things like their thumbprints start to show up. And then finally, trimester 3. That lasts from roughly the 27 to the 40-week mark. That is what I like to call the final countdown. And it is where the baby gets much larger physically, so that he or she can be at a healthy delivery weight, which is very important to both mother and baby. Now, for the deep dive, we're going to go month by month, and I'm going to outline some really important things for you. The pictures I'm going to show you come from medmd.org, as does the information attached to all of them. Now, for the sake of ease and to infuse humanity back into this concept, we're going to name our preborn child for this example, Anne. So, in month 1, this takes us from weeks 1 to 4. Anne is going to look kind of like an alien. At this point, her structure has started to develop, and the neck and the face have emerged. Her heart and her blood vessels are developing. Finally, her liver and her lungs and her stomach have all begun to form. That's right, all of that is happening in weeks 1 through 4. Now, all of that is actually made possible because her placenta, which was actually formed during the gestational period specifically for her, it's giving her vital nutrients that she needs to both survive and thrive, and that's going to be important later, so don't forget that. Now, at this point, Anne's mom is going to have a positive pregnancy test. Yay! Then month 2, that gets us all the way to the 8-week mark. Now, Anne is still going to look sort of alien, but her human features are definitely coming into much sharper focus. She'll be a little over a half an inch long. Her ears and her eyelids have actually started to form at this point. You can also see the very tip of Anne's nose, as well as the formation of both her arms and also her legs. And the very beginnings of growth in her toes and in her fingers. That's really a beautiful thing when you look at the pictures. Then we get to month 3. This also gets us to the 12-week mark. Now, Anne is definitely looking human by this stage. Anne is going to be nearly 2 inches tall, and she will start making these little tiny movements to test her surroundings, because remember, infants move in the womb quite a bit. Now, at this point, Anne's mom gets the incredible gift of being able to hear Anne's heartbeat. And Anne's doctor will be able to guess fairly accurately that Anne is most likely going to be a girl. More on that later as well. Then we get to month 4, and this gets us all the way to the 16-week mark. Now, Anne at this point looks totally human. Small human, but totally human. She's about 4.5 inches tall, and she also weighs about 3.5 ounces. At this point, Anne's heart and her blood vessels, the ones you can see on like your arm and stuff, they are well formed, and her eyes can blink. Now, Anne's toes and her fingers have now developed their own unique prints, and those prints, once she is born, will be used to identify her unique humanness for the rest of her life, which is so cool to think about. Month number 5. That gets us to the 20-week mark. Now, Anne weighs about 10 ounces and is roughly 6 inches tall. Anne can yawn, she can suck her thumb, she can make all these facial expressions, and she can stretch. Now, this is also where Anne's mom will get to get an ultrasound picture of what Anne looks like, and where the doctor can ensure that Anne's placenta is functioning correctly, because remember, we talked about that before. Now, during the ultrasound, gender will be confirmed completely. This is the point where they can say, hey, we should probably start figuring out some female names. Now, month 6. That gets us all the way to the 24-week mark. Anne weighs about 1.5 pounds, and she can actually recognize sounds like her mom's voice, which is why it's important to talk to the child growing within. Now, Anne is even capable of realizing when she's upside down in her little home because her inner ears have fully formed. And fun fact, human inner ears actually help guide our directional awareness. Then we get to month number 7, which also gets us to the 28-week mark. Now, Anne at this point weighs about 2 pounds and 6 ounces. She's completely capable of changing positions in her little home, and she can actually be born healthy at this point. Now, this is probably where Anne's mom is going to be signing up for birthing classes. Then we get to month number 8. Now, at this point, it puts us at the 32-week mark. Anne, she weighs about 4 pounds, and she's moving around a whole lot, as a little one is wont to do. She's actually beginning to have her very own layers of fat they're building on. So from here on out, Anne will be putting on about half of her birth weight that she has left to go. Now, this is really important because whenever babies are born underweight, it can cause a whole lot of problems, which is why, even though that she can be born at this point and be born fairly healthy, it's not necessarily recommended. Then, month number 9. This gets us up to week 36, it gets us from week 36 all the way to birth. By this point, Anne will be about 18.5 inches tall, and she's also going to weigh around 6 pounds. Now, her brain is developing real fast, and her lungs are fully formed. She is ready to meet her mom and the outside world. So, to recap, for Anne's first 3 weeks of life, she will be known as a blastocyte. Then from week 3 to week 8, the proper term for Anne's level of growth is embryo. And at week 8, Anne's level of growth will put her at being a fetus. And that is where what she will be known as until her mom delivers her, at which point she will be given the label newborn baby girl. Now, all those labels are scientifically accurate for a very human child's level of growth within the womb, which we've just gone through. But none of those labels take anything away from her factual humanity as a growing baby girl. Now, for those of you who are interested in doing a little more research about this on your own, I absolutely would recommend that. There's so much really cool information out there, and I've actually attached links to all of my source material down below. Not only that, but I've included a super fascinating article from Live Action, and it gives even more information, gives more pictures, all that good jazz, should you so desire to check all that information out and dig a little deeper for yourselves. It is just, the information is just absolutely fantastic. Additionally, if you or somebody that you know is facing a crisis pregnancy, an unexpected pregnancy, an unwanted pregnancy, whatever it may be, I have got so many resources to guide you or them to. No judgment, only love and help. And for the general populace, I would love to hear your thoughts, your agreements or your disagreements, although if it's a disagreement, just please keep it kind, and any prayer requests or praises that you may have. Now, next Saturday, we will look at all the proofs of humanity. There's scientific, there's ideological, etc., etc. It is going to be incredible once you start delving into the depths of it all, and I'm so excited to get to take this journey with you. Until then, be blessed. Never forget how loved and how cherished you are by our Creator. And here is your friendly reminder for this week that you are welcome here no matter what your background or your beliefs are. Let's be pioneers in the space between picket lines together.